Have you ever looked at someone else's success and felt a sting of jealousy, frustration, or even anger? What if I told you that those feelings are completely normal, but also completely useless? You see, we live in a world obsessed with comparison. Social media makes it every day we scroll past someone's highlight reel and measure it against our own behind the scenes struggles. And here's the truth that most people refuse to admit. They're not competing with you. They're competing with themselves. But somehow we've convinced ourselves that someone else's victory diminishes our own potential. Here's the shocking part. The moment you stop caring who is doing better than you, you gain freedom, absolute freedom. You stop reacting emotionally to every post, every achievement, every success story that isn't yours. You stop wasting energy on envy, frustration, and the constant need to prove yourself. And here's the kicker. When you finally stop looking outward, you can turn all that energy inward. You can focus entirely on growth, on learning, on becoming the person you were meant to be. Now, I know what you're thinking, but how do I stop caring? How do I ignore the noise? Let me tell you a story. There was a man who started his career at the bottom, unnoticed, unrecognized, constantly watching others get ahead. At first, he envied every colleague, every competitor, every person who seemed to move faster than him. But then, one day, he realized that his obsession with them was killing his progress. So he made a radical choice. He would stop comparing himself entirely. He wouldn't measure success against someone else's timeline. Instead, he measured it against his own growth, his own discipline, his own commitment to excellence. And here's the beautiful part. Almost overnight, the weight of comparison lifted, and his results began to skyrocket. Because here's the truth, the only person you should be worried about outperforming is the person you were yesterday. Success isn't a race against others, it's a relentless pursuit of becoming your best self. Every time you shift your focus from external competition to internal growth, you step into a different dimension of productivity, creativity, and joy. You stop chasing approval and start chasing mastery. So I ask you again, are you living your life reacting to someone else's scoreboard? Or are you finally willing to take control of your own game? Are you willing to silence the voices of comparison and step into a reality where your potential is defined by no one but yourself? Because the moment you do, you'll discover a power you never knew existed. A power that can't be taken, copied, or compared. Section 1 is ready. Let me ask you something. What if everything you've been chasing outside of yourself has been a lie? What if the promotions, the praise, the recognition, the likes, the followers, they don't actually make you fulfilled? Most people spend their entire lives running after external validation, thinking it's proof of worth, thinking it's proof of success. And yet, no matter how much they get, it never fills the void inside. Because fulfillment doesn't come from the outside. Fulfillment comes from one place and one place only. Knowing you gave everything you had to the life in front of you. Think about it. When was the last time you did something solely for yourself? Not to impress, not to compete, not to prove a point, but just because you wanted to, because it mattered to you, because it aligned with who you are. That, my friend, is where the magic happens. That is where freedom lies. When you stop comparing, when you stop looking over your shoulder, when you stop measuring your worth against someone else's journey, you finally get to play the game on your terms. And here's what most people fail to understand. Playing on your terms isn't selfish. It's essential. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who spent years trying to outperform her peers. She studied their every move, mimicked their strategies, obsessed over their results. And what happened? She became exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from her own purpose. One day she made a conscious decision to stop. She stopped trying to keep up. She stopped trying to prove anything to anyone. She redirected all of her energy to mastering her craft, to understanding her strengths, to building the version of herself she had always imagined. Within months, the results she had been chasing her entire life started coming naturally. Effortless, authentic, undeniable. Because she was no longer competing with others, she was competing with herself. And here's the secret. They don't teach this in schools, in workplaces, or on social media. True growth, true power, true impact, it comes when you stop reacting to the noise and start creating your own rhythm. When you realize that every comparison is a distraction, every envy is a drain, and every attempt to outshine someone else is wasted energy. So I ask you now, are you ready to stop chasing shadows and start building substance? Are you ready to stop caring who is ahead and start caring who you are becoming? Because the moment you make that choice, the world shifts, the pressure lifts, the noise fades. And finally, you step into a version of yourself that isn't limited by other people's achievements, but propelled by your own relentless commitment to growth. Have you ever noticed how the most successful people don't obsess over competition? They don't scroll endlessly, measuring themselves against everyone else. They do something far more powerful. They master themselves. And here's the part most people miss. Mastery begins with one question. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Not someone else, not some Instagram highlight reel, not some coworker's promotion, just you. Because the truth is, life doesn't reward the person who is busiest comparing. Life rewards the person who is relentlessly committed to self-improvement. Every decision, every habit, every action compounds. And when you focus on your own growth, the results are inevitable. But here's the catch. Most people never reach that stage because they are trapped in what I call the comparison loop. They watch, they envy, they criticize, they scroll, They react, and they do nothing to improve themselves, and it's exhausting. Let me give you a story to illustrate this. There was a man who worked in a highly competitive field. Every day he watched his peers get promotions, awards, and recognition. For years he tried to mimic their strategies to beat them at their own game. But nothing worked. He was frustrated, resentful, and burned out. One day he made a simple, radical shift. He stopped measuring his worth against anyone else. He stopped reacting emotionally to their success. Instead, he devoted every hour, every ounce of energy to improving himself, his skills, his discipline, his mindset. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, he began to rise. Within a year, he was far ahead of everyone he once envied, not because he competed with them, but because he mastered himself. And that is the paradox. The moment you stop worrying about who is doing better, you become unstoppable. The moment you stop chasing approval, you gain influence. The moment you stop comparing, you become the person others can't help but notice, not because you're louder, flashier, or faster, but because you are consistently better, day after day, in ways no one else can replicate. So ask yourself right now, how much of your energy is wasted looking at other people's success? And how much could you accomplish if that energy was redirected toward yourself? Imagine what would happen if every hour you spent scrolling, judging, or envying was spent learning, creating, improving, or mastering a skill that belongs only to you. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary, not by outdoing others, but by outdoing themselves. Because when you master yourself, the world stops being a threat. The world becomes an arena where your potential is unlimited, where your progress is undeniable, and where no one can steal your joy, your purpose, or your victory. Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, someone else always seems to be ahead? That sting isn't failure, it's focus misdirected. You see, most people make the fatal mistake of thinking success is a contest. They believe life measures you against others. And so they live stressed, anxious, and exhausted, always reacting, never creating. But here's the truth, the only scoreboard that matters is your own. The only race that counts is your race. Imagine this: every time you compare yourself to someone else, you drain your energy, weaken your confidence, and distract yourself from what actually matters: growth. Comparison is a thief. It steals your creativity, your focus, your ambition, and leaves you chasing shadows. The people who succeed don't waste a second on envy. They harness every ounce of energy to become better than yesterday, to refine their craft, to embrace discomfort, and to master the art of consistency. Let me share a story. There was a young woman who constantly watched her peers' success, scrolling late at night, thinking, why not me? Why can't I have that? She became frustrated, anxious, and stagnant. One day, she realized she was trapped in a pattern of comparison. So she made a radical choice as she turned inward. She created a plan to improve herself daily, measure her own progress, and focus on what only she could control. She studied, practiced, failed, and tried again. But every effort was aligned with her purpose. Within months, the results she desired naturally followed. She no longer chased other success, she cultivated her own. And here's the powerful lesson: the world rewards those who focus inward. The people who stop caring who is ahead gain clarity, energy, and unstoppable momentum. Comparison keeps you small, focus makes you giant. Every hour spent judging someone else that you could have spent building, creating, or mastering yourself. Every moment spent reacting to envy is a moment you could have spent shaping your own destiny. So I challenge you, look at your life honestly. Are you running someone else's race, or are you building your own? Are you measuring yourself with someone else's ruler, or are you creating your own standard of excellence? Because the moment you choose to focus entirely on your growth, everything changes. The anxiety disappears, the doubt fades, and what remains is a relentless, unstoppable drive to become the person you were meant to be. Not defined by others, but defined by your own purpose, discipline, and vision. Do you ever feel trapped in the shadow of someone else's success? That little voice whispering, they're ahead of me, I'll never catch up. That voice is a lie. And the shocking truth is, the moment you let it control you, you stop living your life and start living theirs. You give away your power to people you don't even know. You let their victories define your worth. But here's the thing, your value has nothing to do with anyone else. Nothing. Every time you compare yourself to someone else, you dilute your focus, you waste energy on distraction, you let anxiety sneak in and steal your momentum. Comparison isn't a motivator, it's a thief. It robs you of confidence, clarity, and courage. And yet, most people fall into this trap every single day, scrolling, judging, worrying, envying, trapped in someone else's highlight reel instead of building their own story. Let me tell you a story. There was a man obsessed with outperforming his colleagues. Every success of theirs felt like a defeat for him. He worked harder, tried to mimic their strategies, and pushed himself to exhaustion. But nothing worked. Then one day, in frustration, he stopped. He stopped looking outside, he turned inward. He measured success only by his growth, his discipline, his actions. He focused on mastering his own craft, on developing skills no one else had. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to rise above the competition. Not because he was faster, louder, or smarter, but because he was focused, consistent, and unstoppable. And here's the lesson. The world doesn't reward comparison. It rewards creation, it rewards consistency, it rewards mastery. Every hour you spend reacting to someone else's achievements is an hour stolen from your own potential. Every thought spent envying is energy wasted. But when you shift your focus inward, everything changes. Clarity replaces confusion. Confidence replaces doubt. Momentum replaces frustration. So I ask you, are you living in someone else's story, or are you writing your own? Are you letting other people's achievements define your worth, or are you committing fully to becoming the best version of yourself? Because the moment you choose yourself over comparison, everything changes. Your energy skyrockets. Your vision becomes clear. And the only competition that matters, your competition with yesterday's you, becomes the most powerful force in your life. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to move forward effortlessly while others are stuck in place? The truth is, it's not talent, luck, or connections. It's focus, but not just any focus. It's the kind of focus that refuses to be distracted by what everyone else is doing. It's the focus that turns comparison into clarity, that converts envy into action, that transforms doubt into unstoppable momentum. Let me explain. The moment you stop caring who is ahead of you, you unlock your most powerful tool, time and energy. Every second that used to be spent worrying, scrolling, or comparing is now available for mastery. You can invest it in your skills, your craft, your mind, your body, your purpose. This is where transformation begins, not overnight, not magically, but through consistent, deliberate action. And here's the thing most people never grasp: consistency compounds. Tiny improvements every day accumulate into extraordinary results over months and years. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man working in a competitive industry, constantly comparing himself to peers, feeling inadequate, stuck, and frustrated. One day, he decided to take control. He stopped checking social media, stopped worrying about rankings, stopped listening to the noise. Instead, he made a plan, an actionable, measurable daily plan. To improve himself, he read, practiced, trained, reflected, and repeated every day. At first, the progress was invisible. Then, slowly but surely, he began to outperform everyone he once envied. Not because he chased them, but because he outworked himself. He had become his own benchmark. And that's the lesson: to be unstoppable, you must redirect all your energy inward. Create rituals that strengthen you. Surround yourself with people who elevate you, not those who trigger comparison. Build systems that measure your growth, not someone else's. Track your progress relentlessly. Celebrate your wins, even the small ones. Because this is how ordinary people transform into extraordinary achievers, through the power of disciplined focus, relentless self-improvement, and refusal to let the world dictate your value. Ask yourself, how much of your energy is wasted on others' success? How much could you achieve if that energy was focused entirely on becoming better than you were yesterday? The choice is yours. The moment you stop caring who is doing better, you stop reacting and start creating. You stop chasing shadows and start building a legacy. You stop following someone else's path and start paving your own. And that, my friend, is where true power lies. Have you ever felt crushed by failure? Like no matter how hard you try, the world keeps proving you're not enough. That pain is real. But here's the truth most people never tell you: failure isn't the enemy. Comparison is. Because when you're obsessed with who's ahead, every setback feels catastrophic, every obstacle unbearable, every criticism personal. But when your focus is on yourself, failure becomes fuel. Setbacks become lessons. Obstacles become opportunities. Think about it. Every great achiever you admire has faced moments where everything seemed impossible. The difference is simple: they didn't measure themselves against others. They didn't obsess over who was winning, who was faster, who was smarter. They measured themselves against their own potential, against their own standards, against the person they were yesterday. And because they focused inward, they turned every failure into a step forward, every loss into a lesson, every challenge into growth. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman building her dream career, constantly watching colleagues climb faster, achieve more, and gain recognition she felt she deserved. Every success of theirs felt like a blow to her confidence. But one day, she made a conscious shift. She stopped comparing. She stopped letting others' results define her. Instead, she focused entirely on what she could control: her skills, her discipline, her mindset. And when setbacks came, as they always do, she didn't crumble. She learned, adjusted, and kept moving forward. Within a year, she surpassed the very people she once envied, not by racing them, but by outgrowing her former self. Here's the powerful lesson: resilience is built in silence, in private, in moments when no one is watching. You can't rely on external approval to endure life's challenges. Comparison weakens you, self-mastery strengthens you. The more you measure yourself by others, the more fragile your confidence becomes. The more you measure yourself by your own growth, the more unstoppable you become. Every obstacle, every failure, every setback becomes a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block. So I challenge you: when you fail, don't look at who succeeded while you fell. Look at yourself. Ask, what can I learn? How can I grow? How can I do better tomorrow? Because the person you are becoming is far more important than anyone else's accomplishments. And the moment you embrace that truth, setbacks no longer control you. They propel you. Your focus, your energy, your determination become untouchable. And that, my friend, is where true power begins. Have you ever noticed how some people seem unstoppable, like nothing can slow them down? The truth is, they aren't faster, smarter, or luckier than you. They've simply mastered the rhythm of momentum. And that's a skill anyone can develop. Momentum isn't about dramatic wins or sudden breakthroughs. It's about small, consistent actions that compound over time, building unstoppable force in your life. But most people never achieve it because they waste energy looking at who's ahead, instead of building their own path forward. Here's the secret. Momentum begins with one simple choice every single day. Do something that makes you better than yesterday. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it must be consistent. A tiny improvement every day, whether it's learning a new skill, practicing discipline, or reflecting on your growth, creates a chain reaction. And when that chain reaction grows, it becomes unstoppable. Suddenly, opportunities appear, results multiply, and your energy soars. But here's the catch: if you're constantly comparing, constantly reacting to someone else's success, momentum becomes impossible. Every distraction slows you down. Every moment of envy is a moment wasted. Let me give you a story. There was a man obsessed with outperforming his colleagues. He tried every shortcut, every tactic, every strategy he could copy from others, but nothing worked. Then one day, he decided to focus entirely on building his own momentum. He created a system of daily actions that compounded over time, learning, practicing, reflecting, improving. At first, progress was invisible, but he trusted the process. He stayed consistent, and slowly, inexorably, he became unstoppable. Not because he outran anyone else, because he outperformed himself every day. And here's the lesson. Unstoppable momentum doesn't come from competition. It comes from mastery, from showing up when no one is watching, from refusing to let distraction, envy, or comparison steal your energy, from creating systems that amplify your growth, track your progress, and celebrate your wins, even the small ones. Because the truth is, habits are the engine that drives success. Focus, discipline, and consistency are the fuel. Comparison is the leak. So I ask you, what chain are you building today? Are you creating unstoppable momentum in your life? Or are you letting the noise of others' success slow you down? Every action, every choice, every moment counts. Build your habits. Protect your focus. Trust the process, and soon the unstoppable force of your growth will leave everyone else behind, not because you competed with them, but because you mastered yourself. Have you ever wondered why some people naturally attract others? Why they seem to inspire without even trying, while most struggle to be noticed? Here's the truth. The most influential people aren't the ones who outperform others or who chase recognition. They're the ones who have mastered themselves, who have built unstoppable momentum, and who lead by example. Influence is never given. It's earned through consistency, authenticity, and focus. And the moment you stop caring who is ahead, you step into that power. Think about it. When you stop reacting to the noise of comparison, you begin to act intentionally. You stop trying to prove yourself and start proving the value of your actions. You stop chasing approval and start creating impact. And when you do that consistently, people notice. Not because you're louder or flashier, but because your presence carries weight. Your results, your growth, your confidence become undeniable. And influence follows naturally, like a shadow you cannot separate from your light. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman building a team in a competitive industry. At first, she tried to lead by mimicking others, trying to outperform colleagues, constantly comparing. But the team sensed her anxiety. Her energy was scattered. Then, she made a radical change. She focused on herself. She mastered her skills, committed to her growth, and built a daily system of improvement. Slowly, her confidence and momentum became contagious. Her team started following, not because she demanded it, but because they saw her dedication, discipline, and authenticity. Influence is never about beating others. It's about inspiring them through your own mastery. And here's the lesson. When you focus on yourself, momentum and influence are inseparable. Comparison robs you of leadership. Self-mastery builds it. Every action you take, every habit you reinforce, every choice to grow strengthens your presence. You no longer need to compete. You need only to be relentless in your pursuit of excellence. People will follow, doors will open, and opportunities will emerge, all because you stopped worrying about others and started perfecting your own path. So ask yourself, are you chasing recognition, or are you building influence through growth? Are you reacting to other people's achievements, or are you leading with the power of your own mastery? Because the moment you embrace yourself over comparison, your presence becomes magnetic, your impact undeniable, and your life transforms in ways you never imagined. Momentum doesn't just build success, it builds legacy. Have you ever noticed that the people who achieve greatness rarely stop? Not because they never face pressure, challenges, or setbacks, but because they've learned the secret most never do. They don't let external noise control their focus. Excellence isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. It's the ability to keep moving forward, improving, and mastering yourself even when the world seems to demand your attention elsewhere. And here's the truth. Comparison is the greatest enemy of sustained excellence. When you constantly measure yourself against others, every obstacle feels heavier, every challenge feels impossible, every criticism feels personal. But when you focus inward, pressure becomes fuel. Setbacks, criticism becomes insight. You develop resilience, consistency, and the power to keep growing no matter the circumstances. And the moment you embrace that, excellence stops being optional. It becomes inevitable. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who started small, unnoticed, constantly surrounded by people who seemed smarter, faster, or luckier. He could have envied them, compared himself endlessly, or given up. But instead, he made a conscious choice. Every day, he invested in himself, developing his skills, improving his mindset, mastering discipline, and learning from every failure. Slowly, over months and years, his momentum compounded. Pressure no longer broke him, it strengthened him. Comparison no longer distracted him. It empowered him to focus on what truly mattered. And eventually, the results spoke for themselves, not because he competed with others, because he outgrew himself continuously. Here's the lesson. Sustained excellence comes from internal measurement, not external approval. It comes from building habits that reinforce growth, from creating systems that protect your energy, and from committing to yourself no matter what distractions arise. Every challenge becomes a stepping stone. Every moment of pressure becomes an opportunity to rise. Every setback becomes the raw material for mastery. So I challenge you, ask yourself right now, are you letting the world dictate your pace? Or are you setting the rhythm of your life? Are you wasting energy reacting to others? Or are you investing it into creating a version of yourself that is unstoppable, resilient, and fulfilled? Because the moment you focus entirely on your growth, excellence becomes a habit, momentum becomes unshakable, and your life transforms from ordinary to extraordinary. Remember, comparison keeps you small. Mastery makes you limitless. Pressure doesn't destroy you, it defines you. And fulfillment isn't found in someone else's success. It's built in the relentless pursuit of your own. Let me ask you one last question. How long are you willing to live in the shadow of someone else's success? How long are you willing to let comparison steal your energy, your confidence, and your future? Because here's the truth, the only person you need to beat, the only person you need to outperform, is the person you were yesterday. Everything else is a distraction. Every like, every post, every achievement of someone else, it doesn't define you. Your growth defines you. Your choices define you. Your commitment to yourself defines you. Imagine what would happen if you made a simple, radical decision today to stop caring who is ahead, to stop reacting to others and start creating your own life, to redirect every ounce of energy you've wasted on envy, fear, or doubt into building your skills, your discipline, your mindset. That's where true power lies. That's where momentum becomes unstoppable. That's where influence becomes magnetic. That's where your life transforms from ordinary to extraordinary. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man who spent years trying to keep up with everyone else, constantly comparing, constantly reacting, constantly doubting. And one day, he finally realized something that changed everything. The world doesn't measure you against anyone else. Only you measure yourself. From that moment, he stopped looking sideways. He stopped chasing approval. He turned inward, focused on his growth, built habits, mastered his craft, and trusted the process. Slowly, the momentum grew, resilience grew, confidence grew, and eventually, he became unstoppable, not because he outran others, but because he outperformed himself every single day. And that is the ultimate lesson. Life doesn't reward envy. Life rewards mastery. Life rewards focus. Life rewards those who commit to themselves, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching. Stop caring who is doing better. Stop reacting to the noise. Stop letting the world steal your energy. Build yourself. Master yourself. Grow yourself. And the world will notice, not because you competed, but because you became undeniable. So I ask you now, are you ready to stop looking at the scoreboard of others and start playing your own game? Are you ready to redirect your energy, to embrace every failure as fuel, to build habits that compound, to create momentum that can't be stopped? Because the moment you do, you step into a power that no one can touch, no one can steal, and no one can compare to. That, my friend, is the life you were meant to live. That is your potential unleashed. That is your legacy.